Study Session 12. Sample Process Recording Number 2. Narrative Model. Interview with Client. Introduction. Mark is beginning to feel more comfortable with me. I am hoping that he will soon disclose information to me concerning his father and mother and his home. I think he is beginning to trust me, so I believe it will make the sessions better. I know that every time that he comes to see me, he is mad because he wants to go home. I feel bad for him because he wants to go, but also know that he cannot return yet. It will be very discouraging to him if he had to come back. I feel very stuck with the case, but I am ready and willing to try to work and intervene not only with Mark, but with his mother and father as well. I am trying to alter his perception about the people at work and his feeling that no one is doing anything for him. I feel it is easy to talk with him about subjects that he wants, but he does not want to talk about what needs to be discussed. I feel I really need to talk about his relationship with his father and mother, but I feel that he wants to avoid it. Focus for work and connection to overall purpose. For today's session, I would like to explore his feelings that no one understands. I want him to see that I know that I cannot completely understand what he is doing, but that I am willing to listen and try to comprehend it. I think this may show him that I do care and am interested in how he is feeling. I feel it is a relatively safe topic and that it could be a good way to establish more trust in our working relationship. This relates to our long-term goal because it will give me a better understanding of how he views Green's chimneys. It will also tell me how he is feeling, besides being angry about placement and what I do not understand. It is important to explore this. He could share with me how he feels like he is getting lost in the crowd and why. I am hoping that he may be able to tell me a definite example of how he is forgotten and to try to remedy it. Content. Today's session was rather interesting and did not go as well as I thought it would. I feel very overwhelmed and focused almost at the happenings. First, I called for Mark to be sent down to my office. He came a few minutes later and was excited to see that I had the art supplies. We talked a little about that and then he told me he had a good weekend. He said he played football and was happy because his mother had brought his cleats up on Thursday. He asked me a really huge favor, which was to have his sister come to Green Chimneys on Thursday for his birthday. I told him I would have to make sure it was okay and he wanted me to call his sister to see if she could. We called and I spoke with her briefly, explaining that I had to just check it. She said she would call me back as to whether or not she could make it. I was feeling okay with the session and felt that Mark was not in a bad mood. That is why I was totally surprised at what happened. I began to bring up the topic I wanted to talk with Mark and about, and he started to get very tense. His face changed and he began drawing a new picture. I did not notice it at the time, but looking back, I see that before he had been drawing a happy picture and then he began to draw one that was not as cheerful. I explained to him that there were things that had to be discussed in order for me to help him. He began to say how you people do not understand and that all of you are trying to keep me here. I told him that he was right, that I could never really understand what he was doing, but that I would like to try. He got even angrier, saying that he was never going home, that maybe he will be discharged in June, and that no one is doing anything to help him, especially me. I asked him what he meant, told him that I was helping him and listening to him, but that he had to talk to me more about himself. He became very mad, and before I even knew what was happening, he stormed out. I was very shocked for a split second, and then I grabbed my keys and walked after him. I watched him go into his classroom, and I was completely clueless as to what I should do next. I went up to Candace's office and explained what had happened. She told me that he has a tendency to run off and that I should make it clear to him right away that he could not do that. I left her office feeling like a failure because this happened. Even though she said that he has done it before, I felt like I had said something wrong. Maybe even something I should not have said. I should not have asked him anything when I saw he was beginning to get mad. But I feel like anytime I bring up something he does not like, it will end up making him angry. This is usually what I would need or like to talk to him about. So I was feeling down and I went back to my office. 3 minutes later, there was a knock at the door and Mark comes in. He told me that his teacher sent him back to me to apologize. I told him that we were going to have to talk about this. As I began to tell him that this was not going to be tolerable, the phone rang. It was Candace, who was inquiring if Mark was with me. When I said yes, she told me that he was AWOL. I told her that he had said his teacher said he could come, but it turns out that he just walked out. She told me that someone was coming to take him to transition. When I hung up with her, I asked Mark if he had a pass with him from his teacher to come up to my office. He showed me a pass from 10 o'clock when he would have come to the session. It was not 10:55. When I asked him about this, he said that the teacher told him just to take this one. He also began telling me that a kid, Dance, was making fun of him and that he was going to kick Dance's ass. I told him that he should tell his teacher that he was being teased. Then we got a knock at the door, and when the man came in, Mark was pissed and started yelling and cursing. He said he was not going to transition. The man told me to call over there, and when I picked up the phone, Mark put his hands on it so I could not call out. We got his hands off and I called. At this point, Mark was screaming and cursing. When I hung up, he said that I was a bitch and that he did not want me as a social worker anymore. He said he wanted Miss Lawyer back and that he did not want to talk with me anymore. He told me I was not his friend and that he did not do anything wrong. I told him that he was going to transition because he left the classroom without getting permission from his teacher. He said that was bullshit, that I did not even ask his teacher. He was crying and every word out of his mouth was the F word. He was yelling at me and the man. When transition got there, he told him he was not going. The worker told him he was, and Mark said he would go with him. He held his hand and they left. This interaction was very intense and I had never seen him so angry and upset. How did I feel? I could not believe that he had turned around in his personality so quickly. I was so shocked at the language that I had just heard, and the anger had come from a 13-year-old boy. I also felt badly that in some way I was to blame for this and that I had let him down. I basically felt horrible. I felt like I had lost any engagement that I had made with him and that he would never trust me again. Along with this, I felt like I needed to do something, even though there was nothing I could do at that point. I had never experienced anything like that before, so it came as a big surprise. I guess I never really thought that he would cuss me out, even though I had read and heard that he has a bad mouth and gets very mouthy. I was not sure what to do and the staff meeting had been cancelled, so I had time to really think about what happened. Around 3, there was a knock on my door. In came Mark, who apologized to me. My first reaction was to ask him if anybody knew he was there. He said yes, that he was at the health center to get his meds. I told him we could talk about this on Friday during our session. He also asked if he could borrow one of the drawing pencils that I had brought in. I politely told him no, maybe another time. I said this because I did not want him to think that I would reward him for his behavior that had occurred only a couple of hours earlier. When he left, I questioned if maybe I should have pushed to talk about it then, but I thought it may have been better to give him some time to think about things. Assessment of the client and assessment of your own work. I am beginning to learn that I cannot think that everyone is going to respond to me right away. I also know that I am going to have to mend the rapport that Mark and I had begun to establish. I realized how much anger he has and that he does not know what to do about it. I also think that I need to keep the session focused right from the start and then maybe allow him to talk freely and draw for the last 5 or 10 minutes. But I notice that he talks more when he is doing something, so I am not sure that this will be beneficial. I am not sure how I can get him to talk about everything, and I do not want him to get the same way when I try to. I feel I may need a different way to approach and engage him in the matter. I also saw how angry he can get when he does not get his way. He can say very hurtful things to people, not caring because he just wants them to be upset. Next steps. I believe it is imperative to talk about this with Mark and work to mend whatever needs to be fixed. This is a good way to talk about dealing with anger in a healthy way. We could use this as an example and talk about what he may have done differently to address his anger. He has to learn that there are people you should respect and that there are rules that need to be followed. I am just not sure how we can bring this up, but I know that he is fully aware that this is going to be our main topic of conversation. End of study session 12. Thank you for listening.